Okay, welcome to the first part in a three-part mini-series of the 2024 Year in Review podcast. So I've been joined by three record collecting friends, all from Leeds. So 2024 has obviously been an amazing year for music and records. And as I said, in this series, I'm joined by three collectors. We talk about our favourite records of the year on this episode. And then we've got a couple more episodes coming up, favourite reissues and also favourite finds of the year. So let's get started. We're counting down our top five favourite records, starting at 5, down to 1. So I'll introduce Kev Trotter, Billy Humphries and Ben Leister. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Hey, mate, all right.
Good to be here. Good evening.
Thanks for having us. We will start with you, Kev, and then. So, what's your number 5? Let's start there.
Yeah, my number 5's Amelia Sisko. Introducing Amelia Sisko. An album that sort of came to me really late in the year, so only just really snuck in. I think it got officially released 6th of December. It's on the Timian Records label, Finnish label. It's a label I've followed for a few years, probably going back 15 years or so. Nicole Willis and the Soul Investigators album was released on that label. Probably my favourite soul funk album of all time. So I've kept an eye out for stuff on there. And yeah, this album came out. It's followed on from a few singles she's had out. There's been a trickle over the last 18 months, but not all featured on this album, so I'm going to have to go back and pick up the 7 inches, which is never a chore for me, as you know. So yeah, it's a really, really soulful album. She's got a really, really good voice. It's got its jazzy moments in the backdrop to it. The Soul Investigators are the house band of the label, so they're backing her. There's also a production company that they use within that label. I've been involved in the songwriting. It's a really strong soul record, essentially. I've played it 6 or 7 times once it came out, just sort of back to back almost. And strangely, it's the one on my list that I haven't actually got on vinyl yet. So I've not been able to hear it on vinyl. And I think this sort of sound, it'll really sort of resonate on vinyl, particularly. It's got a warmth to it that's really nice.
Cool. Has it just come out recently then?
Last week, literally
right.
6th of December, yeah.
Cool.
Like I said, there's been a few singles kicking about on 7 inch. 1 or 2 of them are on this album, but yeah, it's sort of, I don't think it's getting a lot of press. I don't think they're a particularly well-known record label, but it's one that as soon as I heard it, I liked, and then I was looking for what I was going to play next, and back to that one, and then yeah, I'll give it a third spin, and yeah, before I knew it, I'd played it 6 or 7 times, and was putting in an order at my local record shop to get a copy of it. So be picking it up in the next week or 2. Yeah,
good stuff. All right, Billy, on to you.
So my number 5 is King Hannah, Big Swim.
Yeah.
Came out about April, May time. Basically, the 5 I've gone for are the things I think I played the most this year. This album holds quite a special place with me because I took my mum, dad, and my sister to the Broodnell for their free gig. For anyone that's met my parents, that was an experience for them coming to the Broodnell. And it was just a really nice evening. They're fantastic live. Lyrically, I think it's the best album they've done. If you've heard the first album or the EP, it follows on from that quite nicely. Slightly cleverer lyrics, a lot more use of the spoken word. Yeah, it hasn't come off my turntable. I absolutely love this one. Brilliant.
Cool. Yeah, I only first heard King Hannah. I didn't really hear the record before I saw the End of the Road Festival in September, end of August, September, and they really blew me away. Again, they were in like a really small kind of like tent, so they were class there. So, and then I went back and listened to the album, and then listened to the first album as well. I've not listened to the EP though. Didn't know I had that.
Yeah, EP is really good. It's just a nice little stepping stone up to the first album, but I definitely think you've got to see them live. I preferred them since I've seen them live to then going back to the music. Top live band, great album.
Cool. All right. Ben?
Yeah, so my number five is Ezra Collective, Dance Like No One's Watching. So this year I've been really delving into like world music, a bit of jazz, as you know, and I think this kind of brings everything together for me. I think it was released back in September, and the kind of main single what came out of this was God Gave Me Feet for Dancing, which personally I think is an absolute banger, bit of a dance floor hit. And it's just one of those songs what I think soundtrack my summer, really. Got a lot of six music play at the time, which probably helped its exposure quite a bit compared to the other two the guys have mentioned. But yeah, I think it's just all around a great record, like a feel good album. And I think even though we're getting into the colder nights now, it's still one I play regular, and it gets me up for a night out, or just puts me in a good mood, to be fair. So yeah, it's one of those albums where when it's on the turntable, it's just good vibes all around, really.
Cool. And that's they've had a few albums out, haven't they, Ezra Collective?
Yeah, I think this is the second or third, yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard the name. The name's floated around a little bit in the collecting circle, let's say. So
They won the Mercury Music Prize last year, didn't they?
Oh, did
Yeah.
they?
Yes.
I think they were nominated again this year, I think. But yeah, great live band as well, like the full jazz backing group and stuff. So it's good.
I've never seen them live, but listening to the records, the thing that stood out for me was the drumming, which I know it's a jazz album and you get jazz drumming and stuff, but the drumming's absolutely brilliant on it. Really does bring it all together. Really good album.
Cool. All right, so my number five is Idols Tank. Obviously, I think as you all know, I'm a huge Idols fan. I was supposed to see them this Saturday, just gone in Manchester, but I didn't get there because the storm Dara. I was on the guest list for that, unfortunately. But anyway, but yeah, just this is their fifth album. They've gone stronger and stronger every album, and obviously live they're amazing. Again, it's a pretty angry album. Joe's lyrics are just the usual shouty, angry, hate people, hate the king, hate politics, hate fucking everything. So, but yeah, it's always been a strong record for me all year. It came out in February, March time. Just looking at my list, 3 out of the 5 of these albums came out really early in the year. So, as we said in the introduction, it's been a strong year for music. So yeah, number 5, Idols Tank for me. So yeah, cool. We'll mix it up then. We'll go back to you, Ben, for number 4.
Yeah, so the number 4 is a little bit of a cheat one, I think, but it's a band called Reds, Pinks and Purples. I don't know if any of you are aware of this band, but they're pretty prolific, and I think it's 3 albums this year they've released. So starting with Unwishing Wealth, Adult Art School, and Still Clouds at Noon. So I think, off memory, I might be wrong, but I think it's 11 albums they've had in the space of 4 or 5 years or so. So a really prolific band, and I think one thing I've really got into the last couple of years with the lads as well is like the San Francisco kind of indie scene. It's bringing back that C86 vibe from like the UK back in the 80s and early 90s. So there's loads of bands like Umbrellas, these guys. So I think it's hard to pick one of the albums out because they kind of merge together. I'd say they're on like 25 minutes to half an hour long.
Yeah,
but it's just real good songwriting, and I think. Yeah, seeing them at the Brood earlier this year in June, and the band was so tight, and you could just see, like from lead singer's point of view, Glenn, he was just outstanding, like just vocally, presence-wise, just everything really. And I think it's a shame that they don't get as much exposure as I think they probably should do. But just a little bit of a story from the gig. He was obsessed with Percy Pigs. He was saying when he was staying in the hotel. And he was writing a song that night when we were playing at the Brood about Percy Pigs from M&S. So I'm looking forward to hearing what that sounds like. But yeah, he was speaking about the Mekons and stuff. They're another band I've never got into, but it's led me on to them, another Leeds band from back in the day. But yeah, I think all 3 albums are really good, so well worth checking out. And the artwork on them's class as well. I think he does the artwork as well, so really cool visuals on the sleeves as well.
So Red to Pink the Purples, you got me into these, and I've bought a few of those records recently. And funnily enough, are they from Portland? Because or somewhere around the area? Because they were there was loads of posters around Portland of their album sleeves and stuff like. Unless they were touring around that point, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I know the part of the San Francisco scene. See, like I say, Glenn, the lead singer, has been in loads of bands before. But their Instagram, the band's Instagram's like really interesting as well. So he just posts loads of stuff on what's influenced him down here. So it kind of puts you not only of a band I like to listen to, but he influenced my kind of taste going forwards and going down wormholes I probably won't go down, which is cool.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Bill?
So number 4 for me is Romance by Fontaines DC. An album I was really looking forward to, mainly on the strength of the 3 singles they released before the albums. I think they're brilliant. I do think the singles are the best tracks on the album. It's been interesting for me how this album split the fan base. I think people have either said it's their best album or it's their worst album. But I guess that's typical with indie music fans, isn't it? Once a band starts selling out arenas and academies, they tend to, they're not their local little band anymore. So people do tend to throw bands like that, dismiss them. Lyrically, I think it's brilliant. I don't think it's their best album, but it's right up there for me. I think it will go down as their classic. I think in 20 years' time, it will be the one that's reissued and reissued and reissued. You know, that's what Morning Glory's become for Oasis. It's got my song on the year as well, Starburst, which I think is an absolute tune. Lyrically, I think it's brilliant. Still not managed to catch them live yet, which is annoying. I got into them in lockdown. They did a free online show that everyone was doing, and when they did the first album in its entirety, and I've been hooked ever since. Really, I think it's a really strong. I like where their sound's going. Anyway, they're more indie than sort of a garage indie band now, which I like.
Yeah. I won't make you jealous by telling you I've seen them twice at the Brunel then, Billy.
That doesn't surprise
it's been recorded, isn't it? Sorry, I just have.
So if you hadn't seen them, Kev, I would have been very surprised, mate.
True. I mean, I think it's a return to form for them because I love their first album.
Yeah.
I thought the second one was okay. I thought the third one kind of meandered without really going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, musically, it just kind of goes off in loads of sonic directions. It's kind of exciting to see where they can go with it next, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, their debut album was brilliant. And like you just said, Kev, the second and third, I bought them both, but I just didn't really pay much attention to them. And then obviously, the hit single that they had, what is it?
Starburst.
It's like it's been everywhere. Like I've played that a few times when I've DJ'd and stuff, and it is a great song. But they've just announced a gig. They've just announced a festival gig up here, and English teacher are supporting them, Bill. So
I think me and my mate Sparky are going. So
perfect. We'll go to that. So I've not seen him for a little while. I've only ever seen him at Glastonbury. I've never seen him by themselves on an own tour.
I actually think one of the best things they released was they released an album they recorded in a prison in lockdown, which is the best of the first 2 albums, which actually I think sounds better than the first and second. I prefer to play them versions of them songs than the album tracks anyway.
It was a record store release, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Cullen Gowl or something, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Kev, on to your number 4.
My number 4, I know, is also a big favourite of yours, Ian. That's The Cure, Songs of a Lost World.
Yes, this is my number 3.
I've got a confession to make before I start talking about The Cure.
Okay.
I, until this album, had never listened to a Cure album, which an indie kid at heart, some people find crazy that I've never listened to a full album by them. But I've got loads of singles by them. Just never sat down and listened to an album by them. I did see them at Glastonbury in '95, and they kind of bored me a little bit. I'll be honest. When they headlined that, but I heard one track from this album, and it was just like, ooh, that's interesting. I thought at first it was an instrumental track because it was about 2.5-3 minutes, no vocals from Robert Smith, and you sort of wonder, this is interesting. Where's this going? Is it, are they going down a bit of a Mogwai sort of route or what? But yeah, brilliant album. I'm now unfortunately going to have to go back and buy all of the 13 Cure albums without listening to them on the back of this album. That's how much I enjoyed this one. It just sounds massive as an album.
Yeah.
It's got a huge sound to it, but yet at the same time, it's spacious as well, if that makes sense for such a big album. Absolutely love it. And apparently there's a companion piece album coming out soon as well, sometime in the near future.
It's in the next couple of weeks, I think. They did that live at the Troxy gig, which our mate Steve Westlake went to Kev, and he said, and I saw him the next day. He'd come up for a Newcastle game up here against Arsenal, and he was like absolutely blown away by how good that album was in its entirety live. And then they did like a greatest hit set afterwards, and he said that even the album blew the greatest hit set away as well. So, which is crazy because obviously they have so many hits, as you just mentioned about the singles. But yeah, this is number 3 for me. And it's when I heard Alone, the first single off it, I was a little bit like you, like, is this just an instrumental song? Is it what's going on? And it was just, it blew me away. It's when you start buying the albums, Kev, like it sounds exactly like Disintegration does, that era of The Cure, which was their best record, probably. And I mean, wasn't the most commercial record, obviously Wish was, but that had Friday I'm in Love on. But yeah, it's such a great record, really, really good. So yeah,
I'm looking forward to delving into the back catalogue, to be honest. Because singles tell you a story of a band, but they only tell you a certain story. The album is usually where you get more experimental tracks, longer tracks.
I think some of the albums are a little bit wishy-washy. I think sometimes, like the first couple are a bit all right, and then they get really good. Disintegration era, like Head on the Door and stuff, and then they kind of go off a little bit. The hardest thing for you is because you're going to be picking the later ones up on vinyl because they're either record store day picture discs, which I don't know why they reissue everything on.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of picture discs.
No, nobody is. And then they've still got some bits to reissue yet as well, so which will probably come on future record store days. But anyway,
okay, I've got a question for you just on the Cure stuff. What made you start with this new release rather than the back catalogue? Working backwards, so to speak.
Just purely because it was out. I'd read a couple of reviews. I'd heard the single leading up to the release of it. I probably had a quiet week that week in terms of downloads to listen to see what I fancied buying, basically, and downloaded it. I was on a walk, I think, at the time, and maybe it's because it was in headphones. It just sounded amazing, and made me basically reevaluate my Cure life, essentially.
I hope you enjoy the journey bit, to be fair.
Well, it's a long one to go on, so we'll see how I go.
So my number 4 is Bernard Butler, Good Grief. Again, this came out really early in the year. I caught him live in a little like a microbrewery up here early in February, and he played a couple of tracks off it, and one of them, what's it called? The record here. Have a look. Camber Sands was just like absolutely beautiful, and then he released the album, and the album's just stunning. I've seen him a couple of times since, and then he supported Richard Hawley last week in Sunderland, and he was brilliant there, and he just was like by himself, obviously captivated the audience. Probably one of the biggest crowds I've seen for a support act for like ages, at a gig I've been to anyway. So like beautiful album. Obviously, he doesn't do any Suede stuff because he fucking hates that band now. So, that's just the way it is. But he played some bits off the album he did with Jesse Buckley. He played some bits off the album he did with who did the song Yes? Who did he do that with? Let's turn around and have a look.
The Tears?
No, McCalmont, Dave McCalmont. So yeah, really good record. Yeah, quite mellow, quite like slow in parts, but yeah, really, really good record. So
his in-store at the Vinyl Whistle.
Sorry, go on, Billy. Go on.
His in-store at the Vinyl Whistle was incredible.
Yeah.
I think you were just about to say something similar, Kev.
Yeah, I was. He was a really nice guy as well, which I don't know if it's just sometimes the impression you get of people in the music press, but I just always thought he'd be really aloof, and it couldn't have been further from it.
Yeah.
It had an absolutely tiring journey. I think he travelled up from Southampton that day by car, was doing this little in-store gig at the Vinyl Whistle, and he played for 35, 40 minutes, something like that. hung around afterwards, went record shopping in the shop afterwards and bought some stuff, and was talking about how much he loves record shops and how important they are and stuff like that. Yeah, just really good guy. But yeah, that's the first album by his solo stuff I've listened to on the back of that in-store. And yeah, his voice, again, doesn't sound anything like I imagined it would.
No,
He's changed it a lot. He's changed it since whatever his first album was called.
Yeah,
Power, was it?
Power,
Whatever.
yeah, something like that, yeah.
Which is brilliant, and I like how he's developed. He's not released too much stuff solely, but when he does, he gets it right.
He was saying he's already almost finished writing another record with some more guests as well. So I think that's coming out next year. I think he mentioned, so it should be good. He was actually driving to Barnsley after the support. He wasn't even going to see Richard Hawley because he was driving to Barnsley because they were playing in Chesterfield the next night. So yeah, cool. Moving on. We'll go back to you, Kev, and then we'll go to your number 3.
Number 3, American band from LA called Dummy. Their album Free Energy. It's their second album. They've had a proper album out and a compilation of their early EPs as well. I think it's released through Trouble in Mind record label, but I think they've got some kind of hookup with Sonic Cathedral, who obviously put out a really impressive back catalogue of shoegaze stuff year after year. They are a shoegaze band, but with a kind of Stereolab influence in there as well. You know, that they've got some tracks that, you know, the start off, especially the intros, wouldn't sound out of place on My Bloody Valentine's, Loveless or something like that. And then they kind of settle into a groove, and the next thing you know, it's prime early Stereolab sort of sound to it. The vocals, female lead singer, there is the guitarist who does a bit as well. Caught them twice live, Hedgerow House in Leeds, which for anybody who's not from Leeds, holds about 100, 150 people. And I think there's probably been about a third of that number there each time I've been to see them. Really good live. They seem to be growing into themselves as a band, getting more confident. I think this is their best album of the two, and including the EP's compilation as well. I just think they're hugely underrated. And again, it's another one of them that's kind of, it snuck up on me a little bit in that I've always liked them, but I sort of played the album. Yeah, I like that. Played it a second time. I love this. And then find myself going back to it time and time again, and had it on even earlier this morning when I was working. It's just a really good album. And if you like shoegaze stuff, if you like My Bloody Valentine or particularly Stereolab and that sort of period of theirs, then I'd say check them out, give them a listen, delve into a relatively short back catalogue, and hopefully enjoy them.
It's been a big year for shoegaze music, hasn't it, this year, really? Like some of the bands that I think one of them's on Billy's list. Like it's been, yeah, not even just the classic shoegaze bands like Ride and Slow Dive and, you know, Bloody Valentine. There's been other bands that are just putting out some stuff. I mean, like I don't think White Lands is on anybody's list, is it? But again, that was a band that, like,
great album,
band that came out from
really good live as well. Yeah.
But yeah, cool. All right, Ben.
Yeah, so third place, I'm gonna go for Waxahachie. I think that's how you pronounce the name, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this one, it's just I'm really into like like Americana indie stuff like Band of Horses, etc. And I think this album is right up there with the best stuff bands like that have done. And I think it's just, I seen her live earlier this year at the Irish Centre, and I've never seen her live before. And if I'm honest with you, this is the first album of hers I got into. So like Kev said about The Cure, I need to go backwards a little bit with Waxahachie, and I think discover the early stuff. But yeah, she just absolutely blew me away, and it was one of them where she came on, and I just got goosebumps all up my arms, down back of my neck. You know what I mean, like that kind of thing. And that happened through the whole set. So it was just one of those gigs where it really cemented that album for me. And I think I kind of tried to think of the top 5 this year, and I think seeing bands live really converts the album into something a lot better, doesn't it? So that one for me was Waxahachie, and I think, yeah, she's got an incredible voice, but the most infectious thing about seeing her live and then listening back to the record is the joy she kind of gets from doing the album, you know what I mean? And the songs, you can see it when she's performing it. Then when you listen back to the record afterwards, it's they both go in tandem basically. And yeah, it was one of my favourite gigs of the year, to be honest. I think it had about 12 pints of Guinness. Like, I think it was yeah, it was a good gig.
Can you
Like
remember it?
real good gig. But yeah, definitely check her out if you're into like your Americana stuff. Yeah, absolutely top notch.
Yeah, I bought that record this year, quite recently in a sale at Vinyl Tap in Huddersfield, and it's brilliant. It's one of my favourites of the year. Didn't make top 5, but yeah, really, her voice is beautiful as well. It's stunning live, so cool.
Are there any albums you haven't bought this year, Ian?
I mean, I don't know. I buy all the albums, you buy all the singles, Kev. We'll leave it at that. Bill, we'll go to you. Go to you.
So I don't think it will come to any surprise for anyone that knows me that my number 3 is Yard Act. Where's My Utopia?
Shock.
I know, shock horror. I only bought the 9 variants of this album. I thought I didn't get the HMV one. I was being good this year. It was obviously their first album, The Overload, is probably already one of my favourite records of all time. And when a band follows it up, a bit apprehensive. I like how the band's grown. They've got a few new members. I actually think it's an album I prefer now to when it came out. The more I listen to it, the more I hear different things. There's a lot of comedians on the album that do funny little voiceovers that, unless you know about them, you can kind of miss them. I really enjoyed when they did the Leeds takeover. They did something at the Leeds market, went on to Crash Records, did a Q&A with Nish Kumar, and then DJ'd, I think, at the Social. I just think it's a brilliant album, and I think they missed a trick not releasing a couple of them singles as 7 inches, because I think they could have done some really interesting remixes with some of them songs. I like the singles. I like the fact that they're not shy in saying that they want to be mainstream. I think a lot of indie bands play it down a little bit. I like the fact that they want to be a really big band, and I quite admire that in them, actually.
We Make Hits would have been, prime time in the 90s. If that had been released, that would have been all over the radio. Singles cheap in HMV and everywhere else, and hitting the top 10, wouldn't it? No problem. You'd imagine.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And just to see how well they've done globally, I think they've just finished their 5th tour of America, which is pretty impressive. And they've gone to Japan and Australia lately. And again, they're a band that I can't wait for what album 3 brings, because I don't think they're afraid to go off in funny little tangents and go from different directions. So I'm definitely interested in, and I'm really happy this isn't The Overload Part 2, because I think if it was, I would have switched off. And that album is very much of a Brexit lockdown Britain, and I'm really glad they've done something completely different with this one. Is it as good as the first one? Probably not, but I think it's a very, very good follow-up.
So I think I actually prefer the second one.
Do you? Cool.
I think it's because I love the early singles from Yard Act, and don't get me wrong, I love The Overload as well. But I think the fact that them singles weren't on the album, it just didn't feel quite as strong. But then, I've grown to love it more over time. But the new album, absolutely love it. I just think it feels like it's telling a story more throughout it than the first album. Seemed like a collection of individual songs, whereas it feels a bit more of a linear sort of within it. But I
think there was only 2 of them on The Overload. It was only the bass player and the singer. I think the guitarist had to do his stuff in another room because of COVID. They didn't have a drummer, so it's definitely, I think the singer James plays the drums on a lot of the tracks. So I think the first one's definitely a bit more put together, if you know what I mean, as in bandaged together, and this one's definitely a bigger band sound.
Can we send you into a frenzy by shoehorning in a mention of another album, Ian?
Go on then, quickly.
Take you off topic. It's linked. I came really close to putting Gustav in my top 5.
Great shout,
Really good friends with Yard Act. Yard Act supported them, I think, or took them on tour, whichever way around it was, in America. And then they supported Yard Act on their UK tour earlier this year.
They were brilliant in Newcastle when I saw them.
They're a great band. Released 2 brilliant albums. So, yeah, just wanted to give them a little mention.
Cool. Right, well, my number 3 is The Cure, which we talked about. Okay, so my number 2 is Laura Marling, Patterns in Repeat. It was my number 1 until this morning when I listened to the records again, and number 1 is just that's been out all for all year anyway. Yeah, Laura Marling, a favorite of mine for years and years and years. She's come back with a brilliant album this year. She released it in October after she had a baby last year, and it's all about like being a mother and like kind of how that's changed her life and stuff like that. And yeah, it's a beautiful album. Her voice is just as amazing as it always has been. Guitar playing's brilliant. I'm really hoping she does a tour next year, which I think she will, because she did 4 nights at Union Chapel this year in London and then 4 nights in New York, I think, or something like that. And apparently those gigs were incredible. Someone I know that went to that one in Union Chapel, and that was his album of the year. So yeah, excellent record. I don't know if you guys are fans of Laura Marling, but
yeah, very much so. Yeah, really like. I saw her on the first album tour. I think it was Brood and Hell. It might be the second album, can't remember. But yeah, she's a brilliant singer. I think she's underrated as a guitar player as well. I know you mentioned it, but I think she's a really good guitar player. I don't know if it's because I genuinely don't like children, but I've not listened to this album as much as I have the other ones. I think it's more down to time and not the bias of the fact that it's about her her baby. But it didn't put me off a Big Moon album that was all based around that. So I can put me dislikes aside, shall we say?
Anyway, we'll move swiftly on before she sues us. Ben, we'll go to you next for number 2.
Yeah, so my number 2 is Mala Leche by Nightjar, aka Jim Goodwin from the Doves.
Yeah.
So I think me and you, Ian, are massive Doves fans, aren't we? Like, I think
Village as well.
Yeah. So
all 4 of us.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah. So I think Doves are one of those bands where, just outstanding band aggressive and return this year, minus Jim, obviously. But I think, this album, like, it's so different. It just properly caught me off guard in terms of the style. It's a hip hop album, basically, which you'd never ever think, like, all the years we've been following Doves, that this would come out like that. I think one real good thing off it is, I know this is a bit of a stretch, but it really reminds me of like Madlib and Jay Dilla stuff, like, you know, the samples. And I'm not saying it's as good as that, but it's got echoes of that being a big influence, which is always good. And I think it's got some good features on there. People like Pan Amsterdam, I'm a big fan of. And I think it's just one of those albums where you just listen to it, you just kind of hear different things, and it's just class. I just really like it. It's something different. It's completely out there in terms of all the other choices I've had. But I think one thing I did buzz off this week, to be fair, was I put Neil onto it from the Vinyl Whistle, and I think they've put it down as their number 1 album of the year, haven't they?
They have.
Yeah, so I think I've paid for Vinyl Whistle's electric bill this year with the plug on that one. So he owes me a discount next time I'm in, I think. But yeah, I think it's I think it's a good album, and I think it's just interesting to see if the Nightjar project carries on, or where Jim goes, like with his solo stuff. It'd be really interesting. But I think the Nightjar albums, it's class. It's just an interesting concept of him going down a hip hop route, I think.
He's not part of a new Doves album, is he? I don't think.
No.
He's part of
but you would imagine that he'll hopefully keep it going. It's probably my favourite hip hop album of the year as well. I mean, I've had quite a bit of hip hop, and I love this album.
Has he left the Doves then?
No,
I don't know if he's officially left them.
He's on the record. He's going to be on the record. He's on the new record, but he's not touring with them. But then,
right, okay.
So obviously they did the 3 small gigs when I was away for the last couple of weeks, and apparently they were incredible with Jez and Andy doing the vocals, and they've had an extra guitarist and an extra maybe pianist or drummer, I can't remember, into the touring band, and they've been really good. So But yeah, he's on the new album because he's on the new single, which is brilliant. The new single,
Yeah, it's really good, really
yeah,
good.
it is. It is. I mean, yeah. Again, Billy, you sent me that variant last night from Blood
Yeah.
Records. Can't order more Blood more Doves
Oh
variant
no.
of
Yeah.
records. As much as I
Have you
want to
listened to
do.
this one, Ian? Have you listened to this Nightjar album?
Yeah, I've got Nightjar's
Yeah,
album.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember it came out. And he was
I've
doing a
got that one.
signing over at Wax and Beans, I think, wasn't he? I think, and then
Yes, he was. Yeah.
was it in the summer? Was it early summertime?
Yeah.
It might have
Yeah,
been.
be about that.
God, it was about. I'm sure it was when I was doing my book launch at Record Plant that day. Or anyway, one of the days around that point. But
Yeah, it was because I was in Spain.
yeah.
And I wanted to go to both, but couldn't. Yeah.
But then
Around June, the album.
his other solo album, Odular, is totally different to that one as well. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that one. That's quite similar to Dove's kind of music, but not as similar. But then the record that Jez and Andy put out, Black Rivers, just sounds like Dove's really. So,
Yeah.
but that's a beautiful record as well. I really do like that one. But yeah, great shout for that one. Cool. Kev, number 2.
Liana Flores, Flower of the Soul. As Ben alluded to earlier about world music and the fact that he's delving more and more into that world. I think it probably started in lockdown for me. 4 or 5 years ago, I started getting into Brazilian and Japanese music. Can't remember how, but pleased to have. I've always, probably 15 years, so I've liked Bebel Gilberto, daughter of Astrid Gilberto, I think she was. And this album's got a similar sort of sound to those two artists, basically. She's half English, half Brazilian. It's a real summery album. So, this came out, I think it was in June. And I pretty much played it constantly throughout the summer. As, Ben had his album with the Ezra Collective earlier. This one totally soundtracked my summer. It's got a real uplifting, feel-good. Some might say a little bit whimsical in places and might use that as a criticism. I love it. I've got no issue with that. There's enough upbeat stuff on there as well to give you a bit of everything. Saw her at the Brudenell playing it live, and yeah, voice really good, band really good, worked in a live setting really well. So yeah, looking forward to hearing more from her. Whatever she does next.
Cool. I'll have to check her out. Funnily enough, the next album I've got on my to play crate is an Astrid Gilberto album. I can see it there.
There we go.
Funnily enough, just the way it landed today. Yeah, cool. Don't know anything about her. So yeah, I'll definitely have to give her a listen. So is it Brazilian kind of influences then?
Yeah, very definitely. Like I said, there's real sort of bossa nova rhythms within there and such like, and it's really uplifting. It's got a summer feel and sound to it. So whether you give it a listen now in the depths of winter or wait till next year, up to you. But I really like it as an album. I think she's a real talent. See how she goes and what she does next. But yeah, give her a listen, check her out.
Cool. Billy, what's your number 2?
New Dad Madra is my number 2, and it was my number 1 for a very, very long time. It was one of the first in-stores I went to this year at Jumbo. I think it came out at the end of January.
Yeah.
Never listened to them before, never heard anything about them before, heard some good things, went to check them out, and it hasn't practically left my turntable since. They sound very much like the Numerals and what they call Dairy and bands like that.
Dreary, yeah.
Dreary, sorry. Very, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but I think her lyrically, her songs are brilliant. I love the way she sings. The guitar playing's great. It's just a really solid album with 10, or I can't remember how many tracks are on it now, but just 10 tracks, 5 on each side. It's only about 40 minutes, but every track is beautiful. And it's in my box of records where I've got where I don't know what to play. It's one of my default records I always go to. Has been since January. I think it's absolutely stunning. And like I said, it was number 1 until my number 1 was released, but it's I can't wait for what they do again. I've managed to track down both their EPs beforehand. Fantastic live band if you get a chance to see them. Definitely do.
I saw them at End of the Road Festival. They played the Thursday night, which obviously didn't have many other bands on, and the crowd was huge in the tent. I remember it was boiling hot. It was end of August, and Drew were on right before actually them as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were on together straight after each other, and it was they were both brilliant. Again, shoegaze, that's what we were just saying before.
No. That's the phrase I was trying to think of.
Shoegaze. I remember the album coming out in end of January because I remember seeing the album cover with the girl's face on the front of it.
Yeah.
So
it's like quite a creepy cover, to be fair.
Yeah, it is weird. Yeah, really weird. I kind of caught my eye, and I was like, oh. So anyway, I didn't buy it straight away, but I bought it a couple months later, and it is a really good record.
Yeah, I was lucky enough that night that me and Billy, or that day that me and Billy had seen them at Jumbo doing their in-store. I went over to see them in York at the Independent Venue Week night they were doing at Fulford Arms, and they were absolutely brilliant, really, really good. So, yeah, I think the both EPs are really, really strong. Got 5 or 6 tracks on each one. Well worth digging around and finding if you can at a reasonable price.
Yeah,
one I think is easier to find than the other one. Cool. But yeah, give them a listen.
Okay, right. So we'll come to our number one spots. Kev says you were just talking then. We'll come to you first. What is your number one record of 2024?
I mean, technically, it could be a couple of other records that I know other people have got listed in theirs, so I've kept them out of mine. But one album that it came out really early in January. It was the first week of January this year. Sprint's Irish band. Been buying their singles and EPs and stuff like that for a good few years now. Seen them live a few times. Really excited about the album coming out, but then there was also a little bit of trepidation because sometimes bands who are brilliant live and have released some really good singles, when it then comes to converting that into a full album, they lose that edge and it gets a bit too polished and doesn't really translate from their live performance into an album. But soon as this started, first track, it opens with like drums and then guitar comes in this sort of menacing way, and then vocals come in, and then it builds and builds, and you can just imagine it as a live song because it's just waiting to crash and mosh pit to go, crazy to it basically. And I think they're an incredible band. I know you like Idols. We have a difference of opinion on them, but I think they have played with Idols. And I could see them being a decent fit sort of on that bill and going down well with that crowd.
Yeah.
Real energy. She's a big personality with a big voice. And yeah, the live are an incredible band. And I think they've translated it into a really energetic, fun, action-packed album, basically. And the fact that it was released in the first week of January and come the end of the year, I didn't hesitate to think, this is my number one. It tells you how well it's stuck with it.
I mean, that's similar to what I'm going to say. But I saw Sprint again, End of the Road Festival. They played there, and I managed to catch. I think I caught a good chunk of the set, and they were really good. Again, like you say, the crowd were really up for it. Very similar to Idols, an Idols crowd. I could see a mosh pit like kind of at the front, but we were further back. So. I don't own the record. I've totally. I remember putting it on a list to buy and then never buying it, and so I need to get that. So one record I haven't bought there, Kev, this year. So I do need to buy it.
That's the one. That's the one.
That's the only one I've never bought. I've not bought this year. But yeah, I do remember listening to it. I've got it on Spotify, and it is a good album. So yeah, okay, cool. Ben, what's your number one of the year?
Yeah, number one goes to another one from start of the year. I think this one was from February. Lime Garden, One More Thing. I think, it's a short album again, around 30 minutes long. So not a very long album, but it's short and punchy. And I think I just think it's brilliant. I've had it on all week, to be fair, just double checking it's going to be my number one. And it still sounds as good as it did in Feb. When sometimes you get a little bit bored of an album you listen to a little bit too much. But yeah, it still sounds really good. And I think the reason why it's probably my number one is it kind of harks back to like a few of the tracks are a bit like New York 2000s, like indie disco vibe for me, and I love that sound. And I think it just takes me back to a place from when I was young and youthful and just on dance floors having a jig around. And I think that track Pop Stars, yeah, it's a great pop song, I think. But yeah, I think seeing him at we went, didn't we, Bill, to Brunel to see
Did,
Live
yeah.
Garden earlier this year, yeah. And again, it's another album which really brought when you hear it played live and the band and stuff. It was excellent and really interesting to see where they go with the second album. So I reckon that'll probably be out soon. But I just love the lead singer's confidence live as well, and I think
Yeah.
you can really see the kind of you can almost see her walking around the stage when you listen to the record and just owning it a little bit. And I think I really like that confidence in a front woman. And yeah, it's an excellent album. And I think all the tracks on it, there's not a bad track on the album, and it's just one I'd happily play on shuffle or in order. It's a great album.
You'd rather have 30 odd minutes of a strong album, wouldn't you, than an hour of here's 5 good tracks and here's a load of filler.
100%, yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it. Is like I think one of you mentioned earlier about Yard Act missing some of the tracks off their first album, from the EP, and I think Yard Act probably could have done a 30-minute debut album. It'd have been amazing, It's just even better than the actual debut. But yeah, this one for me, it's just perfect time, perfect soundtrack to a good year. To be fair,
Yeah.
Cool. Billy, what's your number one?
My number one is English Teacher. This could be Texas. It's not just album of the year for me. It's album of the last, I don't know how long, few years. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Another one that gets better with every listen. I was a bit slow on the uptake with them. I had the EP and never really gave it much time. And the guys from Jumbo, I hadn't pre-ordered the album, but the guys from Jumbo let us in for the in-store, which I think was a week before the album came out. And it was a completely stripped back acoustic version of the album. And her voice, I think she made me weep 3 times with her singing. I mean, it was absolutely stunning. Bought a couple, seen them 3 or 4 times this year. The free gig at the Brudenell that me and Kev went to, even though they kept us waiting for a few hours, it was well worth going. And they supported Yard Act at Millennium Square in the summer with Fat Dog, which is probably my gig of the year. I genuinely think they could go on to be our biggest export around the world. I genuinely think they could be our one. I think they're about to take off, and I don't know, whatever they're going to do next, I think it's going to be brilliant. Really nice people as well. I had a few drinks with a couple of them on record store day. Me, Carl, and the bass player and the drummer were outside smoking, just chatting about, this is before the Mercury Music Prize nominations and everything. They're really humble guys and girls. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's as good a debut album as there's been in a long time. And again, I'm just really excited to see what they're going to do next.
Okay, cool. Yeah, an album I love as well. Again, I caught them live this year at End of the Road. There seem to be a lot of bands that we've talked about tonight played End of the Road Festival. And that was when they'd been nominated and obviously went on to win it, didn't they? Mercury Music Prize, well deserved as well. Again,
I think so.
Somebody else, another lead singer who's just got so much confidence, hasn't she, as well, in stage presence and really, really good record.
Yeah.
They all play 2 or 3 musicians. They all play 2 or 3 instruments as well, which is always quite impressive.
I was going to say, it feels like a bit more of a fragile confidence with her. Talked about Lime Garden and I think Lime Garden and English Teacher were probably my 2 albums of the year. Obviously kept them out for letting you guys talk about them, but I think Lily her voice is amazing live, and it does send goosebumps down you. Yeah,
really does.
Especially on the slower tracks, in particular. But I can see them being massive. That Mercury nomination is not going to hurt, is it? So
no, definitely not. Okay, cool. My number one is an album that came out in like the 3rd week in January or something, and that's Lucky Da by Bill Ryder Jones. An album that he'd been having met him at End of the Road Festival and talked to him, and he got a couple of bits signed from him. He was saying that record took him a long time to kind of put together. He's had his demons and issues in the past as Bill Ryder Jones, but he's come back really strong. His other solo stuff from a while back was great, but this is just like, it hit me instantly, and I think it never left the turntable, but pretty much the whole of January and pretty much all of February as well. I think it was always kind of there in the pile to play. He played it live, obviously, like I say, at End of the Road. He didn't play all the songs, but he played a few. But he's been playing some stuff live recently. He played the album in full actually last night in London that I'd seen. And he's just a really nice guy. Had plenty of time to talk to everybody who was getting stuff signed, because there was quite a big queue, but he spent time with everybody. He was there for ages. Really nice guy. Great producer as well. He produced some of his own stuff. He produced like Michael Head's album this year as well, which will have been in my top 10, but obviously we're talking top 5 tonight. So yeah, really good, like kind of folky album. It doesn't sound anything like what he used to sound like in the Coral when he was in the Coral back in the early days of the first 2 records with them. But yeah, such a super guy. Yeah, really, really good record. And as I said, it was my number 2 earlier, but having listened to it again twice today, it's just jumped into number 1. I absolutely love it. So yeah, so that's our top 5 records of 2024 in terms of new releases. Join us again on the next episode where we talk our favorite reissues of the year. And yeah, thanks to Kev and to Ben and to Billy for coming on, and we'll catch up with you again soon.